Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another discussion group here with the students of the Masters in Applied Linguistics and English Teaching. We have today here Marlene Zuniga, Brisa Severo, and myself, Daniel Ojeda. So we're going to have a discussion about three different articles, which are very interesting. One is in second language acquisition, the other one is in translanguaging, and the other one is in social linguistics. So we're going to start with the one that I mentioned at the end, which is Brisa's article. So, Brisa, can you tell us something a little bit about your article? We're going to discuss it a little bit. Go ahead.
Yes, well, my article title is Changing Perceptions of Language in Sociolinguistics. It was written by Wang and et al., and it explores the relation between language and the connection with the social factors. This article mainly discusses that there are some traditional theories that talk about language itself, but the author tried to make like a connection between the social aspects that sometimes we don't take in consideration. In this critique that I wrote, I make like an overview of like the main points of the article that were discussed by the author. One of them was that the article highlights the importance of looking at language from different perspectives, and that those perceptions were examined during the text by looking at sociolinguistic approaches. The article focused on two traditional theories. One was the Saussure theory, and the other one was the Chomsky theory that are linked. Basically, both theories talk about the same. I don't know, Marlene, if you remember something about these theories.
Yes, I do, Brisa. Well, first of all, Saussure, according to the article, it is explained as this distinguish between long and parallel. In long, he refers to the abstract system of the rules, and parallel refers to the individual or actual use of the language. This is related with also with the Chomsky contribution where Chomsky is used with similar concepts but related more with competence and performance. If I'm not wrong, and if of the thing that I understand, the competence is similar to the Saussure long, that is the ideal speaker listener's knowledge of the language, and the performance is more similar to the parallel, the actual use of the language in real context.
Yes, basically, both Sassoon and Chomsky talk about this relation, but what the article did, or what the author did in the article, was to bring those traditional theories that Marlene already explained to a connection or make a link between those theories and the social factors. Like that was like the main strength from the article. Okay, now another thing that the authors mentioned was the concept of multimodality. That is basically that there are some other aspects that we have to take in consideration when talking about language, not language in isolation. So I don't know, Daniel, if you know what is the concept of multimodality or how it is related to language.
Yes, of course. Well, you already mentioned the Saussure and the Chomsky's theories about talking about a langue et parole. So now here we're going to begin with language is more than that. Yes, language goes beyond langue et parole, just the speaking and the knowledge. It also takes into account uh, what you do when you're talking, like your gestures, the even the how you write. I don't know, the all the semiotic things that are related to language, because everything that we do when we speak conveys some meaning, not only what we say, but also how we say, the intonation, even the clothes that we're wearing, how we communicate through let's say social media, for example. We add emojis, we add capital letters to show that we are yelling, and we have like a lot of different ways of communication that have to be taken into consideration uh, in society.
Yes, according to Saussure, as cited in Wang, semiotics is the study of signs and symbols and their use in interpretation. This means that to communicate, we don't need just the written or the spoken language. We need more things, right? And the multimodality concept was introduced by the authors to emphasize that language works with the hand of these semiotics and the social factors and the social interactions, that it doesn't work in isolation. So that's the other strength. Now we have, in this article, we have some weaknesses. The first one that I found is that there is a lack of empirical examples to support the theoretical information presented. The authors mentioned that, yes, we don't have to focus only in the traditional theories, we have to look at social factors and things like that, but they don't provide examples to show this. They are just saying that you have to make the link with the social factors, but they don't tell you how. So I think that in that article, there were a lack of empirical examples to show us how we can make that link. So I think that for my part, that's everything that I was able to analyze in my article. I don't know, Marlene, if you want to continue with yours.
Yeah, thank you, Brisa, for your contribution. Now, yeah, Marlene, as Brisa said, we're going to continue with your article, which is about translanguaging, right? And this is going to be very interesting because there is like a blurry boundary between translanguaging, code switching, and other terms. So, yeah, Merlin, can you start, please?
Yes, thank you, Danny. Thank you, Brisa. Yes, as Danny mentioned it, my article critique is related with exploring translanguaging in CLIL classrooms by Targa Nikula and Pat Moore in 2016. The authors examined how translanguaging is part of bilingual or multilingual classroom. This study is using qualitative data from three contexts: Austria, Finland, and Spain, where English is taken as a foreign language. This is something that is very important. But before to continue talking more about my article, I would like to know, what do you guys understand about translanguaging? Danny, could you please help me to say one definition of this phenomenon?
Yes, of course. And as I already mentioned, there's like a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to translanguaging, code switching, because both terms talk about going from a language to the other, just like back and forth over and over. But even though at the beginning, when the translanguaging was adopted in order to help teaching, because actually translanguaging, which was which term was the first time mentioned in the Welsh territory, it was used only to teach, but then it extended to more areas. And even though this first approach of translanguaging said that it was something very systematic, actually now we know that it's totally the opposite. Whereas code switching is more systematic. We think about what we're gonna say. Translanguaging is very spontaneous. It's not systematic at all. Actually, we use all the resources that we have in our brain related to languages in order to talk. For example, in my case, when I speak Spanish, it's a little bit difficult to stick to just one language. because sometimes I want to say some words in English, or when I'm speaking English, I want to say some words in French, but I have to adapt these words only to the audience that I am talking to. But if I use translanguaging, it would involve speaking like, uh, let's say one word in Spanish and then in English and then in French and then let's say a word in Japanese, just because that's how my brain is coming up with the words. Yeah. So yeah, that's more about translanguaging. So I don't know if Brisa has some different or similar definition of translanguaging, or whether what you have read about it.
Well, at the beginning of the semester, I was doing my research about code switching. That is something that is very related with translanguaging. So I was asked to read more about the definition of translanguaging and code switching and what was the main difference between one and another. So I think that there is something that we have to know and we have to understand, because sometimes we can't, because they are very similar. So we have to understand what's the difference between one and another. So we are going to understand that translanguaging differs from traditional code switching by focusing on how bilinguals naturally and strategically use the full linguistic repertoire to communicate, not just one or two languages and switch between one and other. It's like something that is more nature, as you mentioned.
Yes, yes, it is true. Thank you so much, Danny. Thank you so much, Brisa, for your comments. They are very related with my topic that it's about translanguaging and the difference between translanguaging and code switching. Also, I would like to tell you guys that in the article, the authors explore these concepts in a very well understanding form. First, the actor starts exploring the concept of the translanguaging and then explores the difference between code switching and translanguaging. It's very precise the organization of the information around these two, well, this topic and how this impacts in CLIL classroom. But I would like to talk more about the limitations because I saw them very interesting. One of the limitations that the article mentioned is that the use of the methodology. There is just one, if I'm not wrong, and I can say it, there is just one methodology that we can use when we are working in translanguaging. This methodology is based in observations, but at the same time recording that observations, because it is important that translanguaging can be seen in a natural setting. So that is one of the reasons that there is no other way to observe the meta language. You know what is meta language, guys? Like when the comments of the students are part of the class and using all their linguistic repertoire. So in this case, I would like to ask to Brisa, Brisa, what do you think about this methodology that is used in translanguaging?
Well, I think that this methodology helps to have like authentic data, because with classroom recordings you are going to capture how translanguaging is naturally used. However, I consider that by recording, for example, a group of students or a group of kids, eh, maybe the kids or the students or the participants can feel like force or something like that. So I think that it would affect like the natural setting. That's one limitation that I see here, that yes, I think that it's a good methodology, but it would affect.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that this methodology is very appropriate for this topic that is translanguaging, but the limitation is that it's not possible to analyze translanguaging in another form or another perspective without losing the ability to observe these types of results, right? That it's in spontaneous, as you mentioned it, and natural well. Well, I would like to close I already closed the article saying that this is an important topic is recent and we have been seeing in bilingual and multilingual education based on EFL context. So this is important to take into account because all the translanguaging is part of the CLIL approach in the EFL context. Now, I would like to give the word to Daniel because he will learn us more about his article critique.
Yes, thank you, Marlene. Yes, this article was very interesting. Actually, when I read it, I got really interested in it because since I love languages and changing from one to another. So yeah, and limitations are always going to be present in every kind of research that we do. But well, now going to my article was a prediction and error-based learning. Let me share my article. Let me share my screen so you can see it. It's here. Okay, is my screen visible, guys, or is still loading?
Yes, Dani. Yes, Dani.
Okay, so yeah, this article is about um, prediction and error-based learning. So, in a summary, is how we can learn through prediction and error-based learning. Actually, there are different ways of prediction in second language acquisition. For example, we have the typical exercises like fill in the blank, like where you have to predict what words goes there. But actually, this is a asynchronous. And this article is more about how a prediction before the word comes in a conversation, we can predict it. For example, let me give you guys an example. Today, it's a beautiful
Day.
day, right? So usually we can predict the words that come after another, but sometimes our prediction is wrong. That's how we learn because we are wrong and we forget. It's like when we say that we learn from mistakes because we remember that, right? So this article is very interesting because that's what it tells us. And actually, that's one of the main characteristics of how artificial intelligence learns through try and error and through the uh, test hypothesis. Do you know, guys, what this concept is about, like test hypothesis?
Yes, Dani. Yes. Well, the hypothesis testing in the article, it says that it is possible to use mechanisms that could help to predict the L to learning. So when learnings make a prediction about something that comes from the language, this can prediction can be a error, and they have to adjust their internal models of the language. So also this hypothesis testing is related with the second language acquisition because it can help learnings to figure out complex patterns like making predictions that you already says, detecting errors, or just to adjusting some expectations.
Yes, and actually, uh, when our brain is trying to predict what is coming next, there are some mechanisms that are activated through our connection of neurons, our network, our network that is very similar to what artificial intelligence has. But there has also been something very interesting as well, which is how sometimes when we try to predict and we are all the time wrong, sometimes our prediction mechanisms abandon predicting. But uh, I don't know, guys, if you have something to say about it.
Well, I have one question that is related to what you said, Daniel. So, how reliable cues influence whether prediction leads to learning or abandonment?
Yes, actually, that's something that I wrote here in the article critique. Um, is that in a nutshell, the article gives us a review of how fascinating is our brain and how it can predict what the word is coming in a sentence. But sometimes when our brain realizes that it's not reliable anymore, meaning that I am trying to predict a sentence. I mean, my brain is trying to predict a sentence or a word or some grammar. And if it's making mistakes all the time, it's going to be like a kid playing, let's say, a video game. You know, when they are playing and then they just lose and lose over and over and over and over and over again. What is the kid going to do? He or she's just going to abandon. They are going to just quit playing. And this is what our brain is going to do. This is what has also been said, and that's a point of the article that they are trying to support that these mechanisms actually help us learn, but on the other hand, these mechanisms also can be counterproductive because they can stop working.
Yes, and also, Daniel, I think that there is one limitation in the article because, well, it was very interesting to look at how this works, but maybe it will be good to look at how this will actually be applied in the real world, like with real
Mhm.
strategies or how it works in the real context when teaching. Because
Yes.
looking at theories or literature or things like that are is like very interesting because it's like everything's wonderful, everything is going to work. But when we are teaching, things
Hmm.
happen and everything's
Hmm.
come totally different. So I think that
Hmm.
that's one limitation of the article, but it was really interesting.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah, let's say maybe some activities can be applied for students where they have to predict, and from their error they have to learn. But how reliable is this? Like, how can we really measure if they are learning or not because of this specific variable? And so far, this is something very difficult to do due to all the limitations that we have in technology. We would have to be looking at how our brain is working, and we don't have all the equipment everywhere, and it's expensive. So yeah, that's something that has to be taken into consideration, right? So thank you very much, Brisa, for your contribution. Well, now just to close up, as you can see, all our articles are about like different things, but at the end of the day, all of them are also about linguistics. And just to summarize, how can you think that we can wrap them in this in the relationship that we have?
Well, thank you, Danny. That's a really interesting question. And for me, I think that we can see that our three articles are related with the use of the language. But now we can understand that language is not just a system in our heads, it's something more, it's multifactorial, if I can say that, because we have like the social factor, the multimodal factor, and also the flexible process where we can see the prediction or the errors that you are talking about, but also we can understand how the sociolinguistics that Brisa it was saying in her article critique, it's how the language is very creative and it plays a crucial role in the learning and communications, and how translanguaging can be seeing as a good or as a bad approach in our nowadays. I mean, we are talking about bilingual and multilingual classroom in EFL context. When we are like practicing this as a teacher, as an English teacher, one example of this, it can be Mexico.
Yes,
Mhm.
well, I think that all of the articles are linked because at the end they talk about language. But I would like to start like it's like a scaffolding system, and I would like to start with Daniel's. Daniel's article talks about acquisition, that I think that is like the first step that we have taking in consideration with language. After acquisition, we have the use of the language that we acquire. Like in this case is Marlene's article about. It talks about how people that know languages use the language to communicate. And at the end, how we link language with other factors, in this case with the social factors. So I think that there is a good relation between our articles because at the end, it's language and language is referred to a lot of different things. So yes, I think that that will be like the link that we have between our articles.
Great. Yes, actually, that was a very summary and like how we learn it and how we can use different languages to teach or learn and how we use them at the end of the day. And we can apply all that in our real life, whereas in our quotidian life or in the classroom, right? So, well, I think we're gonna finish here. We're gonna close up here for today. It was very interesting, every article, and to hear your opinions and contributions. Thank you so much, guys, for participation here in this discussion group. And well, that's gonna be it for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danny. Likewise.
Bye.
See you guys.